الذي زين صدور السالكين بزينة المعرفة الذي نور قلوب العارفين بنور الولاية الذي أحيانا بعد ما أماتنا وإليه البعث والنشور أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله والعزة والعظمة لله والليل والنهار لله وما سكن فيهما لله الواحد القهار أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وكلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين أما بعد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المبين إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء صدق الله مولانا العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وسلم عليه. It is my honor and my pleasure to come to your beautiful town and share some moments with you in contemplation of your ambitions to study the noble and sacred deen. May Allah accept my attendance and your attendance.
Ameen. Ameen.
I don't need to talk about the virtues of those who strive to ascertain the knowledge of deen. I'm sure learned shuyukh have already told you about this. Needless to say that the Prophet ﷺ reminds us that the moment a person steps out of his house to acquire the knowledge of deen, the angels, they spread their wings beneath his feet or her feet. That is a great honor afforded to humankind on account of that pursuit for knowledge, and it's that pursuit that you are here for today. There's many other material that can be cited, but what I would like to highlight is a few salient points so that we can understand what exactly is this pursuit about and where is it taking us. There are many courses and there are many institutions in the world that teach the sacred deen. And in accordance with their own ability, they are doing their job, and may Allah bestow upon them more himma, opportunity and tawfiq to carry out this noble work. However, the Suyuti Institute is different in many ways, and the difference of the institute is something that perhaps is not apparent and may become apparent in the next 50 to 100 years. Historically, when new phenomena comes about, very few people realize what it's actually all about, because there's so many products in the market, and you look at those and you perhaps don't focus on the outcome of a particular product. You think they all do the same job, and so therefore they're all the same. But that's the first point I want to really bring to your attention. How is the Suyuti Institute actually different? It's not different because I say it's different, or because someone who's in Suyuti says it's different. How is it actually, in clinical terms, different? What sets it apart? You see, Islamic leadership has always been in the hands of the ulil amr, as the Quran describes. the people of authority. And Allah specifically commands us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, or you believe, ati'ullaha, be subservient to Allah, wa ati'ur rasul, and be subservient to his Rasul, wa ulil amri minkum, and those who are in authority over you. But notice, preceding the word Allah is ati, be subservient to, and preceding the word Rasul is also atiu. But preceding the word ulil amr in this verse, there is no atiu. It was, the sequence is, be subservient to Allah, be subservient to Rasul, and those who are in authority. Now there is a hidden gem in this. It's not that someone who simply says that I am ulil amr, or puts it on his CV or on his business card, that makes a person ulil amr, in authority. The prerequisite of ulil amr, one in authority, is that he himself must be subservient to Allah and his Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If he himself is not subservient, then he could call himself ulil amr or do a marketing campaign globally and be renowned as ulil amr. He could change his name and become ulil amr, but he won't be ulil amr. To be ulil amr, you have to be truly subservient to Allah and his Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The prerequisite to subservience, is knowledge. If I am subservient to the law of this country, then I need to have knowledge of the law of this country. And if I don't have knowledge, well, you know what the saying is, ignorance of law is no excuse. I can't say, well, sorry, I didn't know that you have to stop at a red traffic light. I didn't know that the speed restriction was this. They're going to say, tough. If you have put yourself in a position where you are now using a facility, then ignorance of law is no excuse. So the subservience of Allah and his Rasul requires knowledge. And if an ulil amr doesn't have knowledge, then he must submit himself to the people of knowledge. Firstly, the ulil amr must be a person of knowledge. But if he is not of knowledge, then he must submit himself to those who are of knowledge. So ultimately we can say that the isharatul nas of the Quran is that the ulil amr ipso facto are the people of knowledge. And it is their authority that guides us to being subservient to Allah and his Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, Islamic leadership is composed of ulama, people of knowledge. The last 2 centuries of the people of knowledge that have sat on seats of power have been the product of a system that was designed 200-300 years ago. In the subcontinent, it's known as the Darsinis. And this syllabus was formulated with a certain number of texts in mind, a certain regime in mind. And the idea was that if you are for example, Hanafi, then here's a set number of texts in the Hanafi tradition. You read them and you graduate. Likewise, if you are a Shafi or a Maliki or a Hanbali or in any other school, if you belong to any other school, then you would go to that particular school. You would seek that knowledge and you would graduate. And whilst that system has prevailed over the last 200 years, with examples of success and with examples of failure, I don't need to go into that. But what the Suyuti Institute actually does is that it doesn't just pay lip service to that blueprint that was created in Turkey 250 years ago, known as the Darsinis. What it does is it goes back to the drawing board and it says, what is there in this syllabus that is actually relevant? Number one. Number two, what is there in this syllabus that is actually lacking? Lacking in the sense of the challenges that lay ahead of us. How does this syllabus not deliver to the individual to deal with those challenges? For example, I think an example would help. How many ulama who graduate are easily able to deliver analytical discourses on subjects such as cloning, organ transplantation, in vitro fertilization, modern issues? The system wasn't designed to cater for people who thought. Of course, those who were genius minds, who were intelligent minds, went on further and did their own research, and alhamdulillah, whatever they delivered. But as a syllabus, there were serious shortcomings. And whilst the East and the Eastern world accommodated those shortcomings because you don't talk about shortcomings of ulama because it's against the respect. That's fine. But in the West, when you don't get answers, then who do you turn to? Where do you go? If the ulama are not giving answers to vital questions, or are not addressing needs or vital needs, or are not giving balanced discourses, then where does the aspirant go? So the Suyuti Institute re-looked at that whole syllabus and said, what are the needs? And let's focus the syllabus based on the needs rather than simply paying lip service to a system. Which sounds good because it's archaic. So we re-looked at that syllabus. What we didn't do is delete that syllabus or delete part of that syllabus. What we did do is add to that syllabus. Because deleting means weakness. If there's elements of, there's aspects of deletion which are relevant. For example, if I sit here and give you an hour's lecture on the law surrounding the treatment of slaves, or the treatment of, and the rights and laws around slavery, you're going to think, what century is he living in? But the subject must be relevant to modern times, but there's no harm in looking at certain principles as they were applied in the olden days. For example, the designation of miqat. In the olden days, nowadays you have airplanes. In the olden days, they used to have ships that used to go to Makkah and Medina, and many a times the captain of the ship used to be a non-Muslim, because naturally there's no requirement that the captain of a ship must be a Muslim. So the captain of the ship would say to the Hujjaj, now we have entered the miqat zone, whilst we're in the water. So then the fuqaha started talking about, well, what is the reliability of his shahada? Because he's a non-Muslim, so therefore, now do we rely on his shahada and his testimony, and do we now accept that as the basis of miqat, and do we now apply the rules of miqat therefore? So whilst that's on the face of it irrelevant, there are certain principles that you can extract. Certainly as far as satellite navigation are concerned. So if the fuqaha accepted the determination of miqat by a non-Muslim captain, then I don't think it's a problem to accept the shahada of a satellite navigation system. But you see, where you can make it relevant, of course, it does become. So what we're not saying is delete. What we're saying is have it there for an understanding, but that understanding must be pitched towards that which is relevant now, rather than simply just regurgitate a whole set of old rules. So we looked at the syllabus and we revived that syllabus. Now I'm about to say a few things to you that may shock some of you, because you don't expect to hear these things. Because the way you've been brought up, it's like my belief, me, his belief, him. But the Suyuti Institute actually opens a new world for you. It says, listen, you may have been brought up as a Hanafi, in the Hanafi tradition, but what's the harm in you knowing the way of Imam Shafi'i? What's the harm in you knowing the way of Imam Malik, rahimahullah? What's the harm in you knowing the way of your adversary? So whilst by default you will study Hanafi fiqh, you will have the option to study Shafi fiqh, and then in due course Maliki fiqh, and then in due course Hanbali fiqh, and then in due course, as per my discussions with other schools of fiqh, such as the fiqh of the Ghair Muqallideen, the fiqh of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, the fiqh of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab Najdi, the fiqh of Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi. This is collectively branded as what we call Ghair Muqallid fiqh. It's a fiqh nevertheless. You know, if Ghair Muqallideen quoted from the Guru Granth Sahib, then it would be easy for us. We would say, well, we don't have to bother because they're quoting from a different text. But when the Ghair Muqallid fiqh emanates from Quran and Sunnah, then we have a right to know what they are saying and where their views emanate from in the Quran and Sunnah. It's all part of the learning process. It's not just, I will learn what I believe and that's it. I will be a parrot to my own cause. Open your minds, open your hearts, and say to yourself that if what you believe is the truth, there's a saying in Farsi, Aftab Ahmad Dalile Aftab Ast. When the sun rises, you don't have to give evidence that the sun has risen. You know, if I say, look, I want to prove to you that the sun is out there, I think people would refer me to a psychiatric ward. They would say, well, you don't need to give evidence. Everyone knows it's out there. So you don't give evidence on something that's out there. If what I believe or what X believes or what Y believes is the truth, then it doesn't need to be shoved down someone's throat and said, you better bloody believe me, otherwise you're in trouble. Why? Because at the end of the day, if what I believe is the truth, then it should appeal. You know? And of course, all truth comes from the Quran and Sunnah. And if someone is shouting Quran and Sunnah, Qala Allah, Qala Rasul, even though you may not like his face, or even though you may not like what he's saying, he deserves to be listened to. And the Suyuti Institute shares this philosophy of the great Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti, rahimahullah, that study everything. In fact, if I show you, if I give you a glimpse of the analysis of Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti 700-800 years ago, Imam Suyuti says, I look at the east and I look at the west. There isn't a hadith which my eyes haven't casted upon. There isn't any book of fiqh or usul fiqh. There isn't any book of hadith or usul hadith, tafsir or usul tafsir, which my eyes haven't had the honor of reading. This is someone who lived 700-800 years ago. And the same philosophy today. Open your minds, open your hearts. And just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean to say that you can't sit with them and listen to them. Who knows? Is your criterion of the truth that I am right because... Well, because I am right. Well, because what makes you right more than the next person? Oh, because I quote Quran and Sunnah. Well, so does he. Oh, because I was born in a Sunni home. Well, if that's your criterion of the truth, well then the Hindu's right also, isn't he? He says, well, I was born in a Hindu home. My parents are Hindu, so I'm going to be a Hindu. So just to say, well, I'm going to be a Muslim, or I'm going to be a Sunni, or I'm going to be because I was born in a home, or because... No, your adversary will have the same... The idea is your ability to listen and understand what your adversary is saying. And if the truth is there, then you don't need to be forced to accept the truth. You yourself will make that judgment. And that's a huge risk. That's a huge gamble. But unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, our parents and forefathers weren't willing to take that risk because they were a migrant community. They came from the Indo subcontinent. They wanted to hold on to what they did. You know, they were not interested in anything else. As far as they were concerned, everything was Islam. You know, whether it was culture or not, they didn't care. It was Islam for them. It was their identity. They went through what we call an identity crisis. And the way they dealt with that crisis is that they held on to, this is mine, this is mine, I bought it from my home, I'm not going to use a normal pipe, I'm going to use a lota because, you know, this is what I bought from home, this is what I'm used to. But what I'm trying to say is that the migrant community has now almost reached its end. Illa mashallah, may Allah preserve those who are still amongst us. But now this generation that you are part of is not a migrant community. You are now the new age British Muslims who are British in name, British in your methodology, British in your style, and therefore your way and understanding of deen would be more from a British point of view rather than from a Pakistani, Indian or Bengali point of view. Do you see the point I'm trying to make? Now you will conduct yourself in your understanding of deen the way, like at school you were taught, religious education. This is what Sikhs believe, this is what Hindus believe, this is what Jews believe. And that was part of your education. Whether it was successful or not is a different matter. But what the Suyuti Institute says is that, look, if there is diversity of thinking, then to be a true leader, you must be able to not only, before you go down the route of rebuttal, you must go down the route of understanding. And rebuttal must not be in an environment of hostility, unfortunately, the way it has now. There's no harm in disagreement. There was disagreement amongst Sahaba. There was disagreement amongst prophets. There was disagreement amongst great people. Disagreement is not the problem. It's when that disagreement takes a form that creates animosity, hostility, polarity, and creates an environment of acrimony. That's when that disagreement has a problem. So what the philosophy of the Suyuti Institute is that understand everything. Don't limit yourself. So now what we say is that when we teach aqaid, yes, as an institution we observe and we adhere to the Ahl Sunnah way of thinking, but there's no harm in understanding and appreciating what the Ahl Tashayyu, what they believe, and the basis of their belief. Likewise, the Ahl Hadith way, there's no harm in understanding that way. If that way has a certain logic that appeals, then that must be investigated. And any statement that comes out of your mouth as a future leader must be balanced. It mustn't be, well, don't listen to them, they don't know what they're talking about, just listen to me. No, it must be, this is their view, this is my view, you decide. That is the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the way of the Sahaba. Look, this is their view. They believe in these gods. Yeah, absolutely. They weren't cursed. Those gods weren't cursed. They said, look, this is your style. And it is a style nevertheless. Allah recognizes that style of life as a style of life. But He says, وَالَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُزْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ. The object of this deen isn't to annihilate other deens. The object of deen isn't to annihilate other deens. The object of deen is لِيُزْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, so that it can be expressed over other deens. Look at the word izhar. It can be expressed over other deens. But remember, la iqraha fi deen, there's no compulsion in deen. So there's many deens. Allah has selected His deen as inna deena indallahi al-Islam. But remember, there are other deens out there. And Allah says to us, listen, don't just limit your inquiry into what you believe. Allah commands us in the Quran. He doesn't say just what you have been taught, just listen to that or believe. No. He says to us, وَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, and travel the earth. I don't want to do tafsir of this verse because it's a beautiful verse, and I could perhaps spend an hour just doing tafsir on this one word, وَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, and travel the earth. But I think the word travel doesn't do justice in translation. Sara yasiru sayran in Arabic means holiday. Sayr. When you're driving your car along the motorway because you need to get from A to B, that's not sayr. That's work. But when you do sayr, then you're relaxed. When you say holiday, you're relaxed. You're not worried about time, you're not worried about this. Allah says, وَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, relax and travel the earth. Why? فَأُنْزُرْ. And again, I don't do the tafsir of the word unzur because there's many depths in this beautiful word. فَأُنْزُرْ, and analyze. كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ, and analyze the lifestyles of those people who rejected their Lord. Who rejected their Lord? Are we talking about a tribe in the Amazon 2,000 years ago? No. Hello, we are talking about 21st century. What is secular society? Secular society is have everything, do everything, enjoy everything, but just forget God. God doesn't need to be part of the equation. Just chill, enjoy life. That's your way. But Allah says, don't just look at their ways, look at the fate of their lifestyles. Look at the sociology, look at the psychology of those people, where their lifestyles have brought them, have delivered to them. And liberalism on the face of it sounds awesome, but look at the product of liberalism. Does it really produce something? Anyway, I don't want to go into detail. What I'm trying to say is, Allah invites us to investigate in the Quran diversity and says, understand your adversary and understand his lifestyle with a view to looking at the outcome of it. What does it deliver? فَأُنْزُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ. And the Prophet ﷺ says a similar hadith in this to further amplify it, and says, اُطْلُبُ الْعِلْمَ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِالسِّينَ. Seek knowledge even if you have to go to China. Well, what knowledge was in China? The knowledge of Quran? The knowledge of Sunnah? What knowledge? Well, if you look at, there's two interpretations of this hadith. One interpretation is, well, seek knowledge wherever you have to go, even if it be China. But another interpretation of this hadith is that even if you have to go to China, meaning what was in China at that time? The Chinese civilization was very advanced in knowledge. So why is the Prophet of Allah, who is the recipient of wahi, telling his companions, go to even China for knowledge? Is there a deficit in the knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah, na'uz billah? No. He's saying, no, go to them, study from them. Why? If you acquire their knowledge, you will be able to deliver your knowledge in a better way to them. Huh? Likewise, today, the alim who disengages himself from science is doing himself an injustice. Why? Because he won't be able to relate the scientific material of the Quran, the scientific material of the Sunnah. So knowledge of science is very important in the modern age. Anyway, coming back and wrapping this up. So we have opened the floodgates. No Islamic institute has done that. Not now, not in 1400 years. It's never been done. It's all about, I will teach what I have been taught, end of. You want to listen to me, you come to me. Otherwise, there you are, there's the door. You want to listen to my adversary, you go to his place. But what the Youth Institute says is, come, we'll teach you everything. And not only will we teach you everything, we'll teach you it straight from the horse's mouth. You don't have to sit here and listen to me and for me to teach you Shia fiqh. No, we'll get the people who promulgate it to teach it to you. Then you can compare yourself and say, yeah, this is where they're coming from. This is where we're coming from. This is a comparison. Knowledge is power, ladies and gentlemen. And what we are promoting is this ability and this confidence that you should be in that position to see this is a stance, this is a stance. They both come from the Quran and Sunnah. And so therefore, we need to make our decision. But not only within the house of Islam. I don't know whether you've been told. We have engaged in a dialogue at a very advanced level with the Church of England. Now what are the Church of England going to do? Well, they're certainly not going to come and arrange a Gyami Sharif at CUT Institute. The Church of England are going to deliver a very structured syllabus in Christian theology. Why does an alim need to know Christian theology? All you need to know is a few references to show the audience that the Bible is wrong. As in, the modern version of the Bible is wrong. No. If I said to you that this is where the Bible has been changed, this is where the Bible has been changed, you'll all say, MashaAllah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. It's okay. And Dr. Zakir Naik does a very good job on Peace TV. We don't need to hear that. It's very good. Excellent. But if I said that in front of a Christian audience, the first thing they would say is, what's your qualifications? Isn't it? They're going to say, what's your authority to quote the Bible? I mean, come on, in all fairness, I mean, if Canon Father Peter Berry came here and started quoting Quran and Sunnah, you'd hardly hear him out, would you? You'd say, carry on. No. At the end of the day, when you are in a society where you are going to do iblagh of deen to those people who follow a certain creed that is not yours, then as a minimum you need to know what they are talking about. You need to be, if not an absolute authority, a semi-authority. And so therefore we have asked the church, we have said, you devise the syllabus, you teach the syllabus, and you tell our future ulama as to what you want them to know about your theology. And that's what they've done. And as of 4th of October, or I don't know the date, they will start teaching at the CUT Institute Christian theology, and likewise Jewish theology, and in due course Hindu theology, and in due course Sikh theology. Why? Because, I mean, Sikh theology is very easy, because, I mean, 80% of it is from the teachings of the oliya anyway, as people like Hazrat Baba Farid Ganj Shakar or Hazrat Baba Bulle Shah. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that, you see, when you go to for example, a Sikh, and you say, listen, put aside the Quran and Sunnah, let's talk about your holy book. He's going to say, yeah, let's talk about my holy book. I say, by the way, do you know that part of your holy book was composed by a Muslim called Hazrat Baba Farid Ganj Shakar? Now, if you talk about the Quran, he may not listen to you, but if you talk about the Guru Granth Sahib, he's going to listen to you. Because that's his heritage. You know, if you go to a Hindu and talk about the Gita, he's going to listen to you, she's going to listen to you. But if you just talk about it, it's one thing. But if you talk about it in an authoritative way, in an authentic way, it's going to have a greater impact on him. So therefore, we have opened that further gate and said, no, our future ulama need to be acquainted with not only the diverse opinions within the house of Islam, but they need to be aware of the diversity of thinking outside the house of Islam also. Why? Because ultimately there are two kinds of ummah. The word ummah is divided into two categories. You have ummate ijabat and ummate da'wat. Ummate ijabat are we. We have accepted deen. But then there is another ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who are known as ummate da'wah. We have to give them da'wah. To give them da'wah, we don't say to them, hey, you listen to me, otherwise you're in trouble. You're going to die in hell. You're going to do this. No. You go to them, and the Quran says, speak to them with good manners. Bil-qawl al-ahsan, the Quran says, with good etiquette. That's why you were told we have a debating society. The debating society isn't, for YouTube entertainment. The debating society is to improve the skills of the ability to communicate ideas. And that is something that has always been there as part of our heritage. But unfortunately, a lot of things have been lost in this last transitional 100 years of migration of Muslim communities to various parts of the world. But the long and short is, ladies and gentlemen, we have a huge challenge ahead of us. We can close our eyes and bury our head in the sand and practice our deen. No one will say anything to us. But there is a generation that is coming which is not as far as 3 generations ahead, is in front of our eyes, and they will only accept the veracity of deen if they are convinced that deen is right. You know why? Because they look at 99% of the population saying that going to a nightclub is fun. And they look at 1% who says, don't go, it's bad, it's not good. Who are they going to follow? 99% or the 1%? I mean, let's be logical. We may have been brainwashed, or we may have allowed ourselves to be brainwashed. But the reality is, this generation isn't. They're going to say, oh, my friends are doing this, why should I be deprived? And if you deprive them, they're going to have an inferiority complex. They're going out there, they're going to have fun. I'm deprived of all of this fun because of my deen. My deen puts chains on me and I can't enjoy life. And look at these people enjoying life and I'm now deprived of this enjoyment. But if only they knew what was real enjoyment. Deen doesn't seek to restrict your enjoyment, it enhances your enjoyment. But the enjoyment and the criteria of enjoyment in the modern secular scene is the emancipation of the nafs. That the more your nafs is free, the more you enjoy. But the emancipation of the nafs is the perfect chain through which Dajjal will capture you. He will say, you are a slave of your nafs. That is the only criterion that I need for you to enroll in my army. If you're a slave of your nafs, then you are a member of my army. Automatically. But if you are a slave of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then I'm going to have problems with you. But the West doesn't tell us to abandon Islam. The West doesn't tell us to abandon our rituals. The West doesn't tell us to abandon our heritage. The West tells us to enjoy our life. But the threshold of enjoyment amounts to the emancipation of the nafs. And when the nafs is emancipated, then all one seeks in life is luxury, utility, enjoyment, peace, tranquility. Tranquility, not the drug tranquility, but tranquility and all of that. And that's the modern lifestyle. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Enjoy as if there is no tomorrow. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Who cares about what's going to happen tomorrow? Enjoy today. Make the most of today. But the mu'min knows that he is on this earth to enjoy this earth and to enjoy the hereafter. That's why he says, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we have lost that heritage, and the Suyuti Institute seeks to revive that heritage. That a Muslim, on the one hand, would be able to embrace science and say to the scientist, oh my brother, you are not my enemy, you are my brother. Because what is your objective? What is the objective of the scientist? What does the scientist want? The scientist wants the truth. I think if you ask any scientist in any university, he'll tell you the same answer. What does the scientist want? He wants the truth. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And what does the Muslim want? The truth. So they're both brothers in one way. The only problem is, this brother has abandoned God and this brother has adopted God. He doesn't know God and he doesn't want to know God. He believes in God. He doesn't believe in God. He believes in God. He doesn't want to know God. He doesn't know God. He knows God, but he doesn't want to know God. Does that make sense? We know God. We know Allah, but we really don't want to know Him. We only really turn to Him when we have exams, or when there's a problem with the job, or when there's a problem with the missus, or when there's a problem in some other bank balance or some other area of life. We don't really want to know Him. We're not really interested in Him. All we are interested in is the maximum utility in this life. Now, I'm not going to go into details as to what the subjects are in the first year, second year, third year, fourth year. You can read that on the website. But the first year subjects are designed to make you appreciate and to create an appetite within you. And amongst those subjects are, I don't know whether you've been told this. Oh, it's in the next presentation. No, that's fine. If it's the next presentation, then I need to have a break. But anyway, these subjects haven't been just designed, by fluke, and all right, we'll try it out. If it works, why not? No. What we also haven't done is just take a textbook and say, here you are, we're going to teach this religiously. What he's written, we're going to teach, and we're not going to go beyond. No. What we've done is like with most traditional Islamic institutes, they have a text and they follow a text. We don't abandon that tradition, but what we say is that we will follow a text, but we will bring in other resources to allow you to have a broader understanding of that. So we have innovative new subjects which haven't been taught before, which you won't find taught anywhere in the world. And when I say that, I'm not saying that, so that you could say, nare takbir, nare, whatever. I'm saying that because tomorrow, 50 years later, 100 years later, history will look back and say, yes, if there was anyone who taught these subjects as a first, it was the Suyuti Institute. For example, subjects such as, let me give you just a selection of a few. Tasawwuf. Where on this earth is Tasawwuf taught? If it's taught in Yemen, in a few backstreet traditional madaris, it's only taught from certain selected texts, but there was never a textbook written on Tasawwuf. Tasawwuf was never an academic discipline. That's why it was never taught. Mysticism. In fact, the result of that is now, in the modern world, you have a whole liege of Sufis or people of Tasawwuf who are all charlatans, cowboys, who have nothing to do with the Quran and Sunnah. In fact, the way they misrepresent Tasawwuf is adverse, or I should use the word perverse, to the Quran and Sunnah. But people follow them, because they perform all these little shenanigans, these tricks, and people think, oh, he looks good, he walks the walk, he talks the talk, and he must be good. Well, if that's your criteria, then you should follow, what's his name? David Copperfield. Isn't David Copperfield? What was his name? Copperfield. Then you should call Peer Copperfield. I mean, if that's your criteria of a saint or of someone good, then you should say Peer Copperfield. Or who's the new one on the block? What's his name? David Blaine. You should say Hazrat David Blaine. Just because he does gimmickry in front of people doesn't mean to say that now he's an authentic person to be the subject of obedience and following. But no, people are obsessed with this dunya. That when they see something ajib or something out of the ordinary, they think that your benchmark of the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is the Quran and the Sunnah. So tasawwuf that is delivered as a syllabus for the first time in the history of Islam is delivered so that you can appreciate real tasawwuf from the Quran and Sunnah. Who was the greatest Sufi that walked on this earth? His name was Muhammadur Rasulullah. And after him, the Anbiya, the Sahaba, the Tabi'een. Who is greater than them? And if someone says, well, this person walks on water, therefore he should be the subject of obedience. No, the people of Tasawwuf says, if a person walks, forget about walking on water, if he walks in the air, but if he digresses from the Quran and Sunnah, then he's not a saint, he's a shaitan. Yes.
Can you elaborate on the term Sufi? What does that mean and where does it come from? Because a lot of people don't know that.
That's another hour and a half lecture for you.
Just sort of a quick short one if you could.
You see, that's in the first lecture on Tasawwuf, that's one of the subjects that's touched. But in a nutshell, and I really mean in a nutshell, the idea of the word Sufi comes from the word Tasawwuf. And Tasawwuf itself looks at the inner dimensions of deen. And so therefore people who practice the inner dimensions of deen, they were referred to as Sufi. But that word is not relevant. What is relevant is the practice. And the best way to understand it is that of a great authority, Shaykh Ali Hajveri rahimahullah, who was the grand student of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Ali Hajveri, the great Kashf al-Mahjub, he wrote. And he said, Tasawwuf today is a name without a reality. In the time of the salaf, it was a reality without a name. So today this word Sufi, tasawwuf is just gimmickry. It's just showmanship. The real word is Islam. The real word is Muslim. But people now identify themselves as Sufis as part of a cult. You are now a Sufi, therefore you should wear, because you are part of such a group, you should wear this cap, you should wear this kurta, you should wear this. This is not Islam. Islam says cover yourself. As long as you do that, doesn't matter how you cover yourself. As long as it's done in the proper way, there's no need for cultism. But unfortunately, the modern scene of tasawwuf and the Sufi is very different to what the Sahaba had understood tasawwuf to be. So this syllabus is designed to allow you an insight into the real tasawwuf and the real Sufi. And who are the real Sufis? The salaf, the tabi'een, the taba tabi'een, and those people. That is why Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, when he refers to the greatest of the oliya, the greatest of the oliya, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah in his Fatawa Ibn Taymiyyah says, Huwa Qutbul Aqtab. He was the Qutb from amongst the Aqtabs. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah even acknowledged the spiritual veracity and the spiritual integrity of the awliya. And not only did Imam Ibn Taymiyyah acknowledge it, Guru Nanak acknowledged it, Guru Gobind Singh acknowledged it. If you look at the Guru Granth Sahib, they talk about the awliya of the 4th, 5th generation. They talk about Junaid al-Baghdadi, they talk about Imam Shibli in the Guru Granth Sahib. They talk about Bayezid al-Bustami, they talk about Shaykh Zakaria, they talk about all the awliya. Why? Because those awliya were the heirs of the salaf. They were the heirs of the salaf. They understood tasawwuf in its real form. Anyway, I've gone on tasawwuf a bit too much, probably because I teach it. But so tasawwuf is a new subject where you will never. I guarantee you, you can have your money back if you want. You will never find a syllabus, and there's no blueprint that we've just a bit from here, a bit from here. No, we've actually sat down and we've looked at the workings of tasawwuf, and we've created, and it's never been an academic subject, but we have turned it into an academic subject so that people who go through it appreciate what tasawwuf really is about from the Quran Sunnah. So that's one example. Another example, I think I've given this example on aqaid. If you look at the aqaid that are taught in the traditional institutes, well, even in our modern institutes, this is the aqidah of the Mu'tazila, this is the aqidah of the Khawarij, this is the 1300 years ago, this is what their differences are. People may not be interested in what the differences of opinion were 1300 years ago. They want to know what the difference of opinions are now. And not only to be brainwashed, to understand what the issue is, understand what the dilemma is. And I often believe that there is actually very little difference of opinion, but that little difference has been exploited by external forces so that those differences have become aggravated. And in countries like the East, where you have not pens to fight with, but Kalashnikovs to fight with, well, then you use your Kalashnikovs. But these differences of opinion have always been present in 1400 years of Islamic history. You have never seen a war that has been fought on the basis of differences of opinion within the House of Islam. Tell me. Tell me if there's been any wars that have been fought. There haven't been. The wars that have been fought have been on different grounds. But what I'm trying to say is that the subject of aqaid that we teach, the first 2 years are the differences of opinion between the Ahl Sunnah and the Ahl Hadith, the Salafis, in a very balanced and in a very articulated way, so that even if someone from, let's say, the other side, even if he or she was to sit there, they would say, yeah, justice is being done in terms of delivering what I believe. It's not just a question of, yeah, well, ignore what they believe. No, justice must be done. The whole picture must be presented. So the first 2 years are muqallid aqaid, and the second 2 years are the differences between the Ahl Sunnah and the Ahl Tashayyu, the Shia, so that the modern alim can have a proper, comprehensive understanding of the mechanics of differences between the two factions. So that's another example. Another example, eschatology. How many institutes in the world teach eschatology? Unfortunately, forget about institute. How many ulama today talk about eschatology? I mean, if you go to an alim, your local alim, and say, Hazrat, can you talk about eschatology? He says, what is eschatology? I don't know what is eschatology. They'll say, but eschatology is a subject that is at the center of the subjects of the Quran and Sunnah. And what is that? Ilmun min akhir zaman. The knowledge of the last days. There's a huge chunk of the Quran that's populated with knowledge of the last days. I don't need to give you examples. There's so much there. What are these verses for? Just for tilawat. So that you say, no, these are to remind us. But the problem is, we just listen to them without paying attention to what is being said. These earthquakes that are happening, these chain of events that's happening, these events in Syria, these events in Iraq. You think these weren't foretold by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You think that Israel forms a military intelligence headquarters in a place called Lud because Israel thought, well, Lud is better than Jerusalem or better than some other part of Israel? Was it coincidental? No. Why did Israel create its military headquarters in a place called Lud? Because that was predestined. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Dajjal will run from Isa alayhi salam, and his final place of refuge to hide away will be a place called Lud. So therefore, nothing is coincidental. What I'm trying to say is that eschatology is very, very important. There's other subjects which we have added to the system. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can see on our website there are many, many other subjects. We are looking at subjects such as contemporary Islamic, contemporary ideologies, fascism, communism, feminism, liberalism. All these are isms that have emerged, and the modern Muslim must be able to evaluate the nature of these isms and compare them to the Quran and Sunnah in a very methodical and in a very systematic manner. And likewise, science and Quran. So there's many new subjects that we've innovated in the syllabus, so to allow a greater understanding and a broader understanding. May Allah allow me and you to spend whatever little life we have left on this earth to be beggars of knowledge, not to be beggars of this dunya. You know why? Because Hazrat Ali say, and I finish on this word, there's a verse of Hazrat Ali, a poem of Hazrat Ali, Karramallahu wajhul kareem. He says, Radina qismatun jabbaru fina. Radina qismatun jabbaru fina. I am happy. We are happy. He says, Radina, we are happy. Qismatun, on our fate. Jabbaru fina. The fate which our Jabbar, Allah is Jabbar, who has given to us. We are happy with what He has given to us in terms of our fate. Why? لَنَا الْعِلْمُ وَلِلْمَالُ جُهَّالِ. He has given us the wealth of knowledge, and to the illiterate people He has given wealth. Why? Wealth comes and goes, isn't it? It comes and goes. But knowledge doesn't come and go. Once you have knowledge, it's there. Not only in this dunya, it's there in the qabr, and it's there in the hashar. That is why when Sayyidina Umar was asked by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Oh Umar, what have you prepared for your grave?" He said, "Will my intellect and my knowledge be intact?" The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Nah, your knowledge will be, the knowledge which you have now and the aql which you have now, it will be intact in your grave." He said, "Then I will deal with the angels in my grave." I will deal with them. Why? Because ultimately, the knowledge which I have inherited from you, there is nothing more powerful than that. No angel is more powerful than that. No phenomena is more powerful than that. Why? The greatest miracle of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the Quran. And if I have the Quran, nothing can touch me. Nowadays, you can stuff your pockets with 20 Qurans. But unfortunately, if you're still a beggar of this dunya, then it doesn't really take you anywhere. May Allah allow us to be true heirs and bastions of knowledge. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ